On day 23, we'll leave Springdale and explore Zion National Park before driving over to Kanab for the night. When we get up in the morning, the mountains around Springdale are truly beautiful. And then we head to the park. It'll be only a very short drive to the park, and soon we're in the park and headed to the Visitor Center where we'll park for the day. This was established as a national monument in 1909 by Taft and enlarged to a national park in 1919. It is on the Colorado Plateau and has several sections. We were here yesterday. We're driving through the valley this morning, and this afternoon we'll drive along the highway. The area we're going to be in first is fairly thin as we drive along the Virgin River through its valley it has cut through the mountain. Over 3 million people visit this part of the park every year, and because of its narrowness and no parking areas, people park and then take the bus as it goes to the various areas, avoiding all the congestion that you would have otherwise. We've gotten here early so we can park at the Visitor Center and take the bus as we head the length of the park to its very north. As you can see, we'll be following the Virgin River and its steep cut through this area of the Colorado Plateau, and so we're in a fairly steep canyon, sometimes over 5,000 feet in elevation above us. The entire park covers 232 square miles. Although water is flowing through this river constantly, it's only 18 to 20 days a year where most of the erosion takes place, when they receive their rain, which washes huge amounts of dirt out of the area. The last huge flood was in 2010 and washed away part of the river, and before that in 1960 the river was dammed up for a while by a mudslide and caused extensive flooding. As we pass by, we see some mule deer. As we arrive near the end of our journey, you can see by the light tops of the mountains that the sun is just coming up and it's still early in the morning. We now get to the end of the road and we'll follow the Virgin River from the Temple of Sinwava, drop off all the way up until we can't follow it anymore. Here the canyon narrows substantially as rock layers change, and instead of cutting straight down, it starts to widen. As you can see here, the sun is just on the tops of the canyon, meaning we're still very early in the morning as we go down the river. We're almost by ourselves. The canyon widens as pieces of sandstone fall off from the wall, as you see here. As we head up the canyon, you can see other evidence of rocks that have been eroded by the floods here. And then we come to a swamp in the desert. This area, the underlying rock cannot absorb water very well, so the overlaying soil stays moist all the time and creates this unique environment that is found only here, and many of the plants would not be found anywhere else for hundreds of miles around. As we head on down the canyon, you can see that it continually gets narrower and narrower. Next we come to another unique environment called Hanging Gardens. We'll see several of these while we're here. As water seeps through the porous sandstone, it eventually comes to places where it cannot seep down, and so it flows out and down the surface. Sometimes this water will have come from more than a half a mile away to get here. And because of this water here, plants are able to live, and even amphibians such as these frog and toad tadpoles. And then it's time to head on out again with Deborah the Explorer. What will we see next? Sometimes they have to close this trail because it gets too icy with the water on it. And then we come to the end of the trail where the narrows start. It gets much narrower from here. And you don't walk on the trail, but actually in the river itself. Most people stop and turn around here, but some head on out to do the adventurous thing and follow it to its headwaters. If you do decide to go on, this is what you would see, but we've decided to go back and to watch a rock squirrel play. Most of the canyon is still in shadows as the sun continues to rise, and you can see how tall some of these cliff sides are. Deborah and I were one of the first ones out here, but now many more people are joining us as more bus loads arrive. But we're headed back to go to other places. And now we come to the end of our trip, and Deborah has completed a 2-mile round trip. Back at the Temple of Sinawava bus station, we get on our bus and we head southward. This time we're going to be stopping at all the stops. We are now at the Temple of Sinawava. We've walked the Riverside Walk, but not the Narrows, and now we're going to head down to Big Bend. All the bus transportation is free, and you just hop on and hop off where you want to. As we come to Big Bend, we come to a series of named peaks. The organ looked like a pipe organ to the people. The Great White Throne, that was where God sat for the judgment. And if he's going to have judgment, the angels had to have a place to land. Now, Angel's Landing is one of the highest points in the entire park. There is a way of getting up there by a trail, but it's so dangerous that several people fall and hurt themselves every year. And now it's time to catch the bus and head to our next stop. We will be traveling from Big Bend, just a little distance over to Weeping Rock, where I will walk along a trail and Deborah will wait on me. There are several trailheads here leading all the way up to the rim if I wanted to, but I'm going to be following a short one to the Weeping Rock. It is very steep, but a fairly short, only about a half-mile long. And it allows me to see another one of these hanging garden areas where water flows. As you can see here, as the rock has eroded away, it has created an overhang for us to get underneath as water drips around us. During times of rain, there can be a waterfall pouring off the top of this. As I head back down, I see several wild turkeys out feeding. And then it's time to get back on the bus and leave Weeping Rock and go down to Zion Lodge. The lodge was built in 1925, but a fire in 1966 completely destroyed it, and it was rebuilt a year later and is still in use today. It's one of those places where you can come and stay and do all sorts of activities, from horseback riding to mountain climbing to just exploring on foot. We'll be eating lunch here at the Outside Terrace Cafe, and as we're sitting there we start to know something. Is that snow? No, it's the local cottonwood trees giving off their seeds, and as you can see, it gathers along the sidewalks, kind of like snow. While Deborah's resting, I'm going to be going to the Emerald Pools. There's actually about 3 in a row that flow from one to the other, and I'm going to be going to the lowest one. And there's a fall hazard in this area, so you have to be careful as you walk. Let's get started. First, we have to cross the Virgin River on a bridge. And this is where we're going. As you can see, the water flowing here is flowing from one of the upper pools, but during the time of rain, this would be a waterfall all the way across here. The trail is going to be about 2 miles long, round trip. This is the lowest of the pools, and you see water pouring down off the top as it comes from other pools higher up that daisy chain and feed each other. When the sun is just right, you can see a rainbow here, and it pours into a pool, and it gets its green color from the algae that grows here all the time. Water even pours and seeps right through the rock.
A little bit of raining here.
Again, they're called emerald pools because of the green color in the water, as you can see here from algae. And they have all sorts of wildlife here, for they're a big oasis in the middle of this dry desert area. And then it's time to head back. Cross the Virgin River and head back to the lodge where I picked Deborah up, and we head out again to explore something new. Next up, we'll be going from the lodge down to the Court of the Patriarchs and look at it a while. When we arrive, we see a western fence swift. For centuries, people have given fanciful names to rock formations. Here at the Court of the Patriarchs, they call these Abraham, Isaac, and in the back, Jacob. Have no idea why, except they have a religious background. Now it's time to leave the Court of the Patriarchs and move to the Zion Human History Museum. The canyon, as said before, is constantly changing, with blocks of stone falling off and widening it, and mudslides like here closing it off in 1960, so it washed out part of the road before cutting through the landslide. As we pan across this landscape, see if you can see the 300-foot long arch that is right in the middle of your picture right here. Oh, you didn't see it? Well, let's go and take a little closer look here. This is Crawford's Arch. See it here? And let's zoom out so you can see how difficult it is to see things like this in this massive place that we're in. This area was first settled by the ancestral Puebloan Indians about 8,000 years ago, and then about 1,500 years ago, the Southern Paiute Indians came. And then in 1860s, the Mormons came. Areas from 5 to 7,000 feet high are good for growing agriculture. And now we're going to move from the Zion Human History Museum to the Visitor Center to pick up our car. After we leave the Visitor Center, we're going to drive up to the Zion Mount Carmel Highway and take it through the mountains and through its tunnel to the other side and see the eastern part of this park. It's kind of difficult getting out of the parking lot because of all the traffic. We're glad we beat it. But we also see some mule deer on the way out. And when we head north into the park and turn east onto the Zion Mount Carmel Highway, which will wind its way up into the mountains and through a tunnel. I'll call you tomorrow. These colors indicate that a waterfall falls through this area when it rains, and as you can see, the sandstone beneath it has been eroded away, creating almost a cave. This road getting up here has been very twisty and curvy, and I don't know if you can see it or not, but directly in front of us is a window cut into the mountain. This is part of the tunnel. Again, here you can see it a little better in slow motion as we drive by it. We'll be in that tunnel in just a few minutes. And now we come to the waiting line to get into the tunnel. Oh, I understand. And now we're about to explore the third part of Zion. We were in the north at Kolob Canyons yesterday. We've driven down the valley today and looked at it in detail. And now we're going to take and go eastward into this area and see the Slick Rock area. This tunnel was built in 1927 to 1930 and is 1.1 miles long. It's not lit on the inside. You turn on your lights, but they did cut windows in the side, and originally it was intended for you to stop and look out them, but because of traffic flow, they've now blocked it so you can't do that. You can only look as you drive by. So let's head into the tunnel. Here's that window that was cut that we were looking at down below. And as we look on down the road, you can see another light spot. That's going to be another one of those windows.
They did it on purpose.
Well, I think at one time you could stop and look and see. And now we've come to the end of the tunnel. And as we exit, we see that there's a huge line of vehicles waiting to enter. This is one-way traffic because the tall vehicles have to use the center of the lane in order not to hit the top. And we're in a totally different area than we were before. This is a Slick Rock area, it's called, and it's high desert as opposed to the wetness of the Virgin River Valley. All the layers and twirls and swirls and everything else is really fascinating. There are also several smaller tunnels to go through, only a few dozen feet long. And as you drive along, you have to constantly be looking. Do you see the bighorn sheep here? Why, they're up there on that little cliff on the left. That completes the last of the big game we had hoped to see while we were on this trip. Bison and moose. We have also some stuff. In national parks, when you see a lot of stopped cars and people out looking, why, there's got to be animals somewhere. Oh, there's the herd of mountain goats up on the hill to the right. And there's also actually some on the left on that little low rise. Oh, I see several up And now it's time to leave Zion Park and head to Kanab. This is actually on the open range, so we're not sure if these are domesticated or wild buffalo. As we continue toward Kanab, we start to notice beautiful pink sandstone everywhere in the cliffs. And when you have pink sandstone, you have pink sand that erodes from it into Coral Pink Sand Dune State Park. And that's what we're driving through right now. As you can see, the pink color of the sand in this area. And there in the distance is a massive pink sand dune. And then we arrive at the Rodeway Inn in Kanab, where we settle in for the night, thus ending day 23.